Anne Boleyn arrived at Henry's court fired up with radical ideas. She grew up here at Hever Castle in Kent, the daughter of Lady Elizabeth Howard and an ambitious diplomat, Thomas Boleyn. Thomas secured his younger daughter a coveted position as maid of honour in the French court. And it was there that Anne was introduced to the new ideas that were transforming Europe.
During those years, she came in contact with evangelical Protestants, people who were rethinking old verities, who were coming up with new ways of approaching everything, including faith.
What were these perhaps contentious new religious ideas that Anne was picking up in France?
A key one is the source of authority. So when you're making decisions about religious matters, who do you look to as the authority on that matter? Whether it's the Bible, Scripture, which is what these evangelicals were arguing, or whether you turn to the wisdom of the church. And followers of Luther said that actually the church was flawed, that the Pope was fallible.
Do you think Henry would have taken these ideas about the authority of the Pope to heart if it hadn't been for Anne?
I think Anne's pivotal because we know that Henry hates Luther. Anne obviously had a real hold on his heart and so could introduce ideas to him that other people couldn't possibly say.
And is this something that's been downplayed by the people who see her as just a sex pot?
I think that comes down to pretty misogynistic ways of seeing Henry VIII's wives in the past, actually, and that it's much easier if you can sort of boil them down to being a bit of skirt and not really anything more. And actually, with Anne, we do have something more. She is somebody who makes a massive difference in terms of English history. We could argue that Henry VIII would not have broken with the Roman Catholic Church if it weren't for Anne's influence.
Anne was at court for several years before she turned the king's head. But when she did, Henry became besotted with her. They weren't lovers yet. Instead, in the private moments they had together, Anne took the opportunity to introduce Henry to a radical Protestant book.
The book Anne's showing Henry is called The Obedience of a Christian Man by William Tyndale, the Protestant scholar. Now, this book is controversial. You might even call it seditious. Tyndale's seen as a heretic by the Catholic Church because his book implies that kings have lost their power to the Church. Anne's taken a serious risk smuggling this book out of France and into England, and then she's been bold enough to put it under Henry's nose. She's even marked a special passage for him to read.
Kings, they are but shadows, vain names and things idle, having nothing to do in the world, but if our Holy Father needeth their help. This is a book that me and all kings should read.
The little interaction shows Anne beginning to persuade the king that maybe not all radical Protestants are bad, and that maybe breaking with Rome could hold advantages from them both.
Anne was winning Henry round to some Protestant ideas. And she refused to sleep with the king until he'd made her his new queen. But there were many obstacles in her way. Henry was still married, and his wife had many supporters at court. Eustace Chapuis was devoted to Charles V, who just happened to be the nephew of Catherine of Aragon. Chapuis really loved Catherine of Aragon. It was said that he venerated her like a saint. And partly as a result of this, he really hated Anne Boleyn. In his letters to Charles V, Chapuis describes Anne as more Lutheran than Luther, and he slut-shamed her. He called her the concubine and the whore. And Chapuis really set up this image of Anne that does survive to this day as the wicked, evil seductress, as the original other woman. Anne's genuine intelligence and sense of political strategy just don't fit into this soap opera version of the story.